Sarah's hands trembled as she smoothed down her 5-year-old dresser, the only one without stains, while her 6-year-old son Tommy tugged at her sleeve. The coffee shop buzzed with Saturday afternoon chatter, and somewhere in this maze of tables sat a man who might just be her chance at happiness. But as she looked down at Tommy's hopeful eyes, that familiar weight of guilt pressed against her chest like a stone. She was supposed to meet David alone. She was supposed to be the confident, available woman her sister had described to him. Instead, here she stood, a frazzled single mother whose babysitter had cancelled last minute, clutching her son's hand like a lifeline while her dreams of romance crumbled before they'd even begun. The morning had started with such promise. Sarah had actually managed to wake up before Tommy, sneaking precious moments to apply makeup and tame her unruly brown hair into something resembling sophistication. For the first time in months, she'd felt a flutter of excitement about something other than paying bills or parent-teacher conferences. Her sister Emma had been relentless about this setup. David Richardson is perfect for you, Sarah. He's successful, kind, and he specifically said he doesn't mind that you have a child. But saying you don't mind and actually facing the reality were two entirely different things, as Sarah had learned from painful experience. When her neighbor Mrs. Chen called at 1 p.m. with a fever and couldn't watch Tommy, Sarah's first instinct was to cancel. She'd crafted the text 3 times. "So sorry, something came up," but Emma's words echoed in her mind, "You can't keep hiding behind motherhood forever. Tommy needs to see his mom happy too." So here she was, scanning the crowded cafe copyright for a man she'd only seen in carefully curated photos, praying he wouldn't run the moment he spotted her unexpected +1. "Mommy, is this where we're meeting your friend?" Tommy whispered, his small hand sticky with the remnants of the granola bar she'd bribed him with for good behavior. "Yes, sweetheart, remember what we talked about? You're going to sit quietly and color while Mommy talks to David, okay?" Tommy nodded solemnly, clutching his worn backpack filled with crayons and coloring books. At 6, he'd already learned to be accommodating, to make himself small when the world felt too big for both of them. It broke Sarah's heart how easily he'd adapted to being her shadow, her constant companion in a life that seemed to have no room for anyone else. She spotted David before he saw her broad shoulders in a navy blazer, checking his phone at a corner table with 2 chairs. Her stomach lurched. He was expecting dinner for 2, not a family meal. Sarah almost turned around, almost grabbed Tommy and fled back to their studio apartment where rejection couldn't find them. But Tommy was already pointing excitedly at the display case of pastries, and she realized she couldn't keep running from every possibility of disappointment. Taking a deep breath that felt like swallowing courage, Sarah approached the table. David looked up as their shadows fell across his phone screen, and she watched his expression shift from anticipation to confusion to something she couldn't quite read. "David, I'm Sarah." She forced brightness into her voice while internally cringing. "I am so sorry, but my babysitter fell through at the last minute, and yeah." "And you must be Tommy," David interrupted, standing and extending his hand to her son with the same respect he might show another adult. "Your mum told me you're 6. That's a pretty important age." Tommy beamed and shook David's hand with both of his smaller ones. "I'm 6 3/4, actually. Mummy says the quarters count." "Your mom is absolutely right. Quarters are very important." David's smile seemed genuine, not the tight, polite expression Sarah had braced herself for. "I hope you like hot chocolate, because I've been looking at their menu, and they make it with real whipped cream." Sarah felt something tight in her chest begin to loosen. David, I really should explain her. There's nothing to explain, he said, pulling out her chair. Actually, this is perfect. I've been nervous about impressing you all week. Having Tommy here takes the pressure off. He winked at her son. Plus, I brought something I thought you might like. From his jacket pocket, David produced a small, intricately carved wooden truck. Tommy's eyes went wide with wonder as David placed it in his small hands. My grandfather made toys like this when I was your age. He always said the best toys were ones that let your imagination drive. David's voice carried a warmth that made Sarah's throat tighten with unexpected emotion. David, you didn't have to, she began. I know I didn't have to. I wanted to. He met her eyes directly. Sarah, can I tell you something? I've been on a lot of dates where people pretend to be someone they're not. You showing up here with Tommy, apologizing for being exactly who you are, that's the most honest thing I've experienced in years. As Tommy became absorbed in rolling his new truck along the table's edge, making soft engine noises, David leaned slightly toward Sarah. Your sister might have mentioned that I run a tech company. What she probably didn't tell you is that I grew up with a single mom too. Sarah's coffee cup paused halfway to her lips. She didn't mention that. Mom worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat. I spent a lot of afternoons in places like this, coloring while she met with potential employers or tried to handle business that couldn't wait for childcare. His eyes found Tommy, who was now creating an elaborate story involving the wooden truck saving a family of sugar packets. I learned early that love isn't about perfect circumstances, it's about showing up, even when it's messy. Most guys run when they find out about Tommy, Sarah admitted, the words slipping out before she could stop them. Then they're idiots, David said simply. Sarah, look at him. Look at how polite he is, how imaginative, how he checks to make sure you're okay every few minutes even though he's completely absorbed in playing. You've raised an incredible kid while building a career and keeping everything together. That's not something to apologize for, that's something to be proud of. Sarah felt tears threatening and blinked them back quickly. She wasn't used to praise that felt this genuine, this unearned. It's been really hard, she whispered. I bet it has, but you're doing it anyway. That's what courage looks like. Tommy suddenly looked up from his truck adventure. Mommy, David's really nice. Can we come back here again? The innocent question hung in the air between them, loaded with possibility and hope. Sarah felt her cheeks flush, but David just grinned. Tommy, I was hoping you'd ask that. There's a children's museum about 10 minutes from here. They have this amazing exhibit where you can build bridges and test them with toy cars. He glanced at Sarah. If your mom doesn't mind, maybe next weekend we could check it out. I mean, if she's free, can we? Mommy, please. Sarah looked between Tommy's excited face and David's patient, hopeful expression. For the first time in longer than she could remember, the future felt like something to anticipate rather than simply endure. I think that sounds wonderful, she said, her voice steady despite the way her heart was racing. As they spent the next 2 hours talking, while Tommy colored and shared stories about school and showed David every detail of his new truck, Sarah realized something profound was shifting. This wasn't just about finding romance. This was about discovering that she didn't have to choose between being a mother and being a woman worthy of love. She could be both, messily and imperfectly, and maybe that was exactly what the right person had been waiting for all along. When they finally gathered their things to leave, David walked them to Sarah's car, a 10-year-old Honda with a car seat and Cheerio dust on the dashboard. He didn't comment on the toy debris or the stack of unpaid bills visible on the passenger seat. "Sarah," he said as Tommy climbed into his car seat, "thank you for today. For being brave enough to show up as yourself. Thank you for making it okay," she replied, meaning it more than she'd ever meant anything. As she drove home with Tommy chattering excitedly about David and the museum and whether they could bring the wooden truck, Sarah caught her reflection in the rear-view mirror. For the first time in years, the woman looking back at her seemed to believe that happiness wasn't something that happened to other people. Sometimes the best blind dates are the ones where you see everything clearly.